the vast bulk of serious work on political economy for the last 30 years, in especially economics-inspired work, has been what can be called institutional political economy. Most of the writing about Europe has been about designing budget rules or monetary rules or representation devices. The work, we can talk about the whole list of authors, also, as German would joke, predominantly Italian, who've contributed to this, but not solely, who've contributed to this school. And as I warned 20 years ago when the euro was about to be adopted, putting an independent central bank in Italy does not make it likely you can get herring there any more than you could before. In other words, the institution doesn't turn Italy into Sweden or Denmark or Germany. And this productivity change, I think, emphasizes this difficulty, that we have seen a massive shift in productivity across a wide range of countries with very differing institutions, and that hasn't made any difference. And so when we think going forward, there will be a knee-jerk tendency, I think, among many economists to think in terms of old solutions, which are all about rules and tweaking institutions. We may have to get our hands dirty and think in terms of very specific bargains and programs. The second point on political economy is also in part a preview of what we hope to do next at the Peterson Institute, as Jeremy and I and some colleagues have been speaking about, which is, again, to make another unfortunately apt, I think, parallel with the issue of climate change. You have a reality, and then the question is, are democratic populations willing to face up to the reality? Is it just going to turn into bitter vituperation? I'm back from a week in London enjoying the Brexit circus. This is something very real. Can any of us try to get some kind of consensus that this is the reality we have, and instead of trying to place blame, move forward given that reality? This is a very big question, but I think this is ultimately a question that we're all going to have to wrestle with, both in climate change and with respect to productivity growth. And some of our new research over the next year, we hope, will start to address those issues.
Frank Rubinski from Aegon. I appreciate your comments on the political economy, and was curious, given this polarized political environment we have and the challenges that presents to implementation, while the list of policy reforms in aggregate might be a little quixotic, I was curious on the individual side, if you kind of break those down piece by piece, which ones would be more palatable and more likely?
Frank, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think it is going to matter case by case. So, I mean, I liked very much Anna's box of 4 boxes of policies, and we can pick out individual ones. I featured the idea that universalist policies may be more palatable to some and are frankly less effective for things we care about. I think this is a subject for a much longer discussion and more research. What I would suggest is, to me, the most striking surprise of the last, let's say, 20 years, without wanting to offend my colleagues from the Peterson Foundation, is that for all the talk about budget loosening, the unwillingness of politicians to spend on infrastructure and public investment across a wide range of countries is really shocking. And again, to be clear, I know the Peterson Foundation is not opposed to that. They're in fact in favor of wise public investment, just paying for it. But I mean, whether it was fighting the issues of austerity in Europe during the crisis, which many of us have some scars from, not as many scars as those unemployed in Greece, but have some scars from, whether it's when Karen was serving in the Obama administration, the inability to get agreement on basic highway bills and infrastructure spending in the US, there's something we fundamentally don't get in political economy. Because even if you go back to the most right-wing, cynical political economy that we know, you go back to James Buchanan, the assumption is always that the politicians would love to spend on this stuff and get their name on it. And the only issue is they're going to overspend because every district wants a piece. And that's not what we've been able to go. So it is, to me, something we have to really confront, even before we get to the Blanchard arguments and the productivity arguments, why we can't get spending on public investment. And even if some of it's excess or some of it's inefficient, we are so far from the optimum in a host of countries. And again, I want to stress it's different institutions. I mean, Germany has massively underinvested in public investment, despite having, as Jeremy can speak about, and he has his own scars from those battles, from his service in the German government, in a situation where their economy's been going great, and they have a very different political economy than some of the other countries. So I'm answering your question with a question, but I would really start there. I think we have to figure out a way of getting responsible public investment politically sustainable. Now, maybe MMT times Green New Deal, Green New will do something. Then the challenge is how to do that in a way that's constructive. But that's where I'd start.